This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
South Africa closes land borders in effort to curb COVID-19 spread. Seychelles begins COVID-19 immunization drive. And the WHO urges COVID-19 vaccine makers to make more doses available to COVAX program. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. It's 1 p.m. here in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm Mahia Mutua. Also coming up on the program. In business, World Bank projects economic recovery in Nigeria with 1.1% growth in 2021. And in sports, hosts Egypt target podium finish in the first ever 32-team World Handball Championships. Welcome to Africa Live. Now, South Africa will temporarily close its land borders to curb the spread of COVID-19. This is one of the latest measures announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa. In a televised national address, Ramaphosa also announced that the country will remain on the same level of the lockdown, that is, level 3. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela has more.
Over the past few weeks, there has been heavy congestion at border posts. Travelers often spend hours in queues, stretching several kilometers. The queues had been slowed down by coronavirus screening. Government believes that these border posts have now become areas of high risk of transmission and therefore should be closed, at least until February 15.
One of the challenges that we have as the festive season draws to a close is the huge congestion at many of our land border posts. This has exposed many people to infection as they wait to be processed, and it has been difficult to ensure that the health requirements for entry to South Africa are met, with many people arriving without proof of COVID-19 tests.
The border posts to be closed include Bait Bridge, which connects South Africa and Zimbabwe, Libombo, which provides entry into Mozambique, as well as the Maseru Bridge border post with Lesotho. Only specific circumstances under which travel will be allowed. These include the transport of goods and cargo, as well as the return of South African citizens and permanent residents.
Other restrictions include the continuation of a complete ban on the sale of alcohol. Indoor and outdoor activities will also remain prohibited.
The president implored South Africans to remain more vigilant as the new variant of the virus ravages parts of the country.
Emerging information suggests that this new variant does not cause more severe illness than the original variants, but does put more pressure on the health system because the cases so rapidly and the hospitals get full much more quickly.
The president said South Africans should avoid what he calls the 3 C's: closed spaces, crowded spaces, and close contact with others. He particularly railed against the attending of funerals.
We are in the grip of a deadly pandemic, and all those activities that would normally take place are just increasing our exposure to risk for ourselves and for the bereaved family and for our own families at home.
Under this level of lockdown, curfew will be from 9 p.m. and end at 5 a.m. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, South Africa's economic hub of Gauteng province has become the epicenter of the country's second wave of the coronavirus, with infections increasing sharply. According to Gauteng Premier David Makhura, the number of COVID-19 cases there has increased tremendously. Once again, CGTN's Yolisa Njamela with those details.
The Gauteng province is in the eye of the storm. At least that's how Premier David Makhura has described the situation.
Hospitals in this province are becoming increasingly overwhelmed with the second wave spreading rapidly. The Steve Biko Academic Hospital in Pretoria in particular has been battling an influx of COVID-19 patients over the past few weeks. This prompted the facility to erect tents in the parking lot. They also used other desperate measures to avoid turning people away. Despite those measures, the hospital still struggled to deal with the increasing numbers. Images of patients being treated in makeshift emergency units made the rounds on social media, with healthcare workers warning that the hospital has reached a breaking point. After the emergence of these pictures, the Premier made an urgent visit to the hospital and admitted that there's a pending crisis.
We are just where we were at the peak of the first wave, and we are passing that peak. All models are telling us that the second wave or the resurgence may be more than the first wave. That is something the evidence is already showing. In the last 7 days, admissions in public hospitals in Gauteng increased from around 700 in public hospitals to above 2,000 just in the last 7 days. If you combine public and private hospitals, the admissions are now above 4,000, about 4,500 admissions in Gauteng hospitals.
What is even more worrying is that coming from all those patients, the people that are sick around the first wave, the people that were sick and at the verge of dying were elderly people, and young people were recovering quickly. Some were not even having symptoms. Now the people that we are admitting are younger people. It's worrying.
Premier Makura attributes the spike in COVID-19 cases to the return of holidaymakers from the December festive season. Some patients are coming from private facilities because of lack of space, while others are from other provinces and from the SADC region.
Given the fact that all the numbers are doubling up, we are gearing up for a difficult time, and that's why we are calling on citizens to continue to help us to support all these measures that are in place.
More tents will now be erected to cope with the increasing pressure in hospitals. Yudisa Njamela for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
Meanwhile, Seychelles has rolled out its immunization campaign against COVID-19. The country is using China's Sinopharm vaccine. The United Arab Emirates donated 50,000 doses of the vaccine to the country. The country's President Wavel Ramkalawan, along with senior government officials, were among the first to receive the vaccine. This was part of a drive to boost confidence in the treatment. The vaccines are not mandatory, though officials hope to vaccinate around 70% of the population. Egypt and Morocco have also approved the use of the Sinopharm vaccine. Racine Vanier, the chief editor at Seychelles news agency, who told us more about the ongoing vaccination drive in the Seychelles.
It was about the health worker that started, and most of them was very willing to have this vaccination today, you know, because when we spoke to them, they said that we want to protect ourselves, but in the same time to protect the people around the Seychelles. We received 50,000 doses of the vaccine from UAE. And after that, we wait for the confirmation from the Ministry of Health before that we can use them. But actually, we have an increase in terms of the cases of COVID-19 here in the Seychelles. Campaign started, and Wavel Ramkalawan, he wants to show the example of the population that this vaccine is safe, and at the same time is encouraging all the people in Seychelles to take the vaccine. And the government want to vaccinate about 69,000 people here in Seychelles, and the target is to vaccinate about 70% of the population in the next 2 or 3 months. We target mostly the health worker for the beginning, because the health worker actually they have the number of the case of the health worker who have been infected with the COVID-19 that is increasing, and the government think that this person that is involved with those who have the COVID-19 we need to be protected. This is the first person that will receive the vaccine, and after that it will be all the policemen, the firefighters, those who are involved with utilities. But after that, all the population of the Seychelles will be receive the vaccine in the next maybe as from next week they will start to give for all the population. But this is not something that the government said you have to do it. It's you. If you want to do it, you go and you take the vaccine. But the government said if you want to be protected, you have a choice.
Indeed, several countries are rolling out their own COVID-19 immunization drives, but the World Health Organization is once again pushing for equitable distribution of the vaccines. Astatal has more.
Around the world, countries have started vaccinating their populations against COVID-19. So far, 5 COVID-19 vaccines are available. The World Health Organization is urging vaccine makers to make more of the jabs available to the COVAX program.
Over 40 countries have now begun vaccinating against COVID-19 using 5 different COVID vaccines. However, all of that vaccination, or virtually all of it, as the Director General has emphasized, were in the high-income and upper-middle-income countries so far.
The COVAX program is a global collaboration which looks to speed up not only the development and manufacture of COVID-19 vaccines, but also ensure equitable distribution. The program is co-led by the WHO, the Vaccine Alliance. So far, COVAX has ordered 2 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines.
A year on, there have been almost 2 million doses from the COVID-19 virus. And while about the safe and effective vaccines that are being rolled out, we want to see this sped up and vaccines allocated equitably in the coming weeks.
WHO officials warn that COVAX's dwindling stockpile could leave 92 lower and lower middle income countries vulnerable. Astatal, CGTN.
On to West Africa, where Nigeria is among the countries battling a second wave of the coronavirus pandemic. And as cases continue to rise in the West African nation, there are a growing number of people who are skeptical about taking the COVID-19 vaccine. Deji Badmus has that story.
The first batch of COVID-19 vaccines is expected to arrive in Nigeria before the end of January. The country hopes to receive 100,000 doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine by then and commence vaccinations immediately. But as the government prepares for this, it faces another big challenge, or what some have termed vaccine phobia.
I cannot internalize or use something something I don't have accurate knowledge of. If you look at what is going on globally, you will see that every country is coming up with their own vaccine. And in Nigeria here, look at it here, in Nigeria, we don't really have the technological know-how. Even most of the doctors we have and some of the hospitals we have, we don't really have those equipment to really test this vaccine. So to me, I cannot really use it. I have to see the effectiveness in other people first before I can adopt it.
I can't take the COVID-19 vaccine. Reason is that I'm not even sure maybe the drug is well tested or not. So I can't buy it, or I can't even take it.
What happens if at the end of the day, the vaccine is administered and it doesn't work for me? So what's going to be the consequence?
Religion is also a fundamental reason for the vaccine phobia here. Some influential religious leaders do not even believe in the existence of COVID-19 and are discouraging people from taking the vaccine. And in a country where religious sense are high, quite a number of people are listening to them. The government must now tackle the pandemic on one hand, and on the other, sensitize people about vaccines.
We must acknowledge that the average non-health worker may not necessarily have all the information required to make an informed decision. We must continue to not only offer the vaccines, but we must put in the hard work, the effort, the time, and the resources that are required to inform the general public. So that understanding around the vaccine needs to improve, and I'm sure that many people will come around.
The government will need the help of religious and traditional leaders, as well as social influencers, to raise awareness about vaccines before the start of mass inoculations. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Further afield, India will begin its nationwide vaccination campaign on Saturday. Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a virtual meeting on Monday with the chief ministers of the country's states to finalize the plan. Ravinda Bawa has the details.
This was one of the several other meetings that the Prime Minister has had with the chief ministers all during the pandemic. The centre has been working in tandem with the states, and one major announcement that came from the Prime Minister was that the first phase of vaccination, which involves around 300 million people, including the health workers, the frontline workers and the elderly, the cost of the first phase of vaccination will be borne by the central government, and the state governments will not have to really take this responsibility. Apart from that, there was another word of caution that he announced, that he actually said that the politicians should not take advantage of their positions in order to jump the queue. So these are two big takeaways from the meeting which he had with the chief ministers, and the rollout strategy has been decided. The CoWIN app, which is going to enable the government to track all those who have been vaccinated for registration as well. That app is going to come in handy, and there have been 3 dry runs in the country in the past few weeks to test the whole system, and there have not been much of issues with the kind of strategy they have. Of course, health workers and the vaccinators have been trained across the country, including in smaller states, and even the dry runs in the smaller states have actually gone on well. So it looks like the whole plan is ready now. Everybody's waiting for the 16th, and to allay fears, the Prime Minister also reiterated the fact that the vaccines are safe and efficient, and these are cost-effective vaccines as far as the country is concerned.
In the U.S., preparations are underway for mass vaccination efforts against COVID-19 in Los Angeles, as hard-hit California continues to grapple with a surge in patients and deaths. Meanwhile, the states of Arizona, Rhode Island, Oklahoma and South Carolina are among the latest infection hotspots. Cases have topped 22.5 million nationwide, with fatalities surpassing 375,000. Edis Tiansan reports.
President Biden got his second dose of the coronavirus vaccine at a hospital in the U.S. state of Delaware on Monday.
Number one priority is getting vaccine in people's arms, like we just did today, as rapidly as we can. And we're working on that program now.
The pandemic shows no sign of relenting. A war zone is how some doctors describe the situation in Los Angeles County hospitals, where dying is a common way to leave the facility for most patients, and the only way for another ICU bed to become available for a critically ill patient. Health officials are racing against time to convert the county's largest testing site at Dodger Stadium into its largest vaccination site. This comes as California's governor committed to making up for the slow start in inoculations.
Here's your next thing to hold me accountable to. 1 million doses within the next, not 10 days, it was 10 days yesterday when I announced it to the team, 9 days.
The state of Arizona has the latest hotspot of the world, with one of the worst diagnosis rates in the U.S. 1 of every 119 people tested positive over the first 8 days of the new year.
We're still seeing that small gathering spread. That when you look at the data, 3 to 5 days after Christmas and Christmas Eve. So, we know that people got together. We know that they let their guard down on Christmas and Christmas Eve. And we saw the resultant spike after that.
In much of the United States, the spread of the coronavirus is still far from being contained, and it continues to take a heavy toll on the economy. The Labor Department's December report on the job market came out much weaker than expected. In the coming days, Biden is expected to lay out his multi-trillion-dollar plans for the next economic relief package that aims to stabilize a struggling economy.
In the meantime, he continues to underscore the mass vaccination efforts as the greatest operational challenge facing the nation, which is also the main source of hope looking forward. It is Tian Shan, CGTN, Los Angeles.
Stay with us here on Africa Live as we take a short break. Here's what's coming up when we return. Mozambique's President Nyusi in Tanzania for an official visit. And UNICEF warns that 1.4 million South Sudanese children face malnutrition.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on Africa Live. To Tanzania now, where Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi is in the country for a one-day official visit. Nyusi was scheduled to visit the East African nation last year, but the visit was postponed. The Mozambique leader has been received by host President John Magufuli in the president's hometown of Chato in Geita region in northwestern Tanzania. Tanzania's Minister of Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation, Paramagamba Kabudi, says bilateral relations between the two countries on key areas of economy, politics and social affairs will top the agenda of the talks between the two presidents.
The good relationship we have with Mozambique will never be taken away. We have a long history of good relationship and we are going to keep it like that. So I call upon my fellow Tanzanians to continue doing business with Mozambique. Let us build our economy, but also make sure we protect our two countries' security.
Staying in the region, the United Nations Children's Fund is warning that 1.4 million children in South Sudan will suffer from malnutrition this year. UNICEF is urging donor countries to provide the necessary funds to help address the problem in the East African country. CGTN's Patrick Oyet has more.
Years of civil war in South Sudan disrupted agriculture, which many depend on in the country. Relative peace since 2018 encouraged farmers to start cultivating, but flooding washed away many of their crops late last year. The dry season has followed, leaving many here with almost nothing to eat. UNICEF says more than 300,000 children are being treated for acute malnutrition.
The situation is, for us, is critical and need our urgent intervention. So UNICEF with donor communities, with government, with humanitarian actors, implementing partners, urge that this is the time we should join our hands to revert this condition and save the life of these children.
South Sudan's government insists it's working to consolidate peace. It says it is aiming to ensure all children are protected and given the opportunity to reach their full potential for growth and development.
South Sudan is blessed with so much resources, and these resources cannot be utilized if we have not invest on human resource, which is the key driver to be able to tap on those resources and make them for the development of South Sudan.
South Sudan's government, it lacks funds because of a fall in global oil prices due to the coronavirus. It has not paid civil servants for 7 months and may only afford a meal a day. UNICEF says the increased cases of acute malnutrition among children in South Sudan is attributed to limited access to essential nutrition, but also health care, water, sanitation, and hygiene services. UNICEF is urging international donors to give more funds to try and address the acute malnutrition situation.
We know what to do, but we know how to do. But to do it, resources are required. And in each step, we need to identify people, we train them, we provide these MIOC tips, and also we provide the life-saving to use therapeutic food, and that all need money.
UNICEF says fighting acute malnutrition will require continued peace in the country, as well as coordinated efforts from aid agencies and ministries such as health, education, and agriculture. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
The foreign ministers of Egypt, France, Germany and Jordan are meeting in Cairo to come up with a plan for reviving peace talks between Palestine and Israel. The quartet of countries holding this meeting was established in February last year on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. Yasser Hakim has more details from Cairo.
Intensive meetings took place in Cairo on Sunday evening and throughout Monday. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi also met with the foreign ministers of the quartet, urging them to create a breakthrough in the Middle East peace process. The group is trying to formalize a working plan to bring the Palestinians and Israelis back to the negotiating table after a 7-year lull.
We are working on creating the proper climate between the Palestinians and Israelis to launch a serious negotiation process, and this entails that each side takes certain confidence, building procedures to bridge the gaps between them, and I can confirm that Egypt will do its utmost effort to achieve this goal.
Direct talks were suspended in 2014 by Palestinian president who alleged violations of Palestinian rights.
We meet in a time that witnesses a deterioration in chances of achieving peace. Today, as we speak, the Israeli government announced the building of 800 new settlements on occupied Palestinian land in clear breach of international law, a step like other steps that reduce the chances of peace.
The quartet nations have agreed on resuming the peace process based on a two-state solution, with an independent Palestinian state according to the June 4, 1967 borders, and with East Jerusalem as its capital.
For this process to develop into a real political dialogue, the Israelis and Palestinians have to adhere to concrete obligations. In our previous meeting in Amman, and today we looked at some of their suggestions. They might be small procedures, but it could be good enough to restore trust between both sides. We want our negotiations with both of them to be on this basis.
Meanwhile, the German foreign minister believes the latest normalization of ties between Israel and several Arab countries could be a catalyst for a peace deal.
Since our first meeting at the Munich Conference for Security Policies, there has been a lot of dynamic developments in the region that we never have imagined or expected before. We are no longer talking about plans to occupy land, but we are talking about a process of normalization between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan and Morocco, while Palestinians resumed security negotiations with Israel. And these developments give us hope.
The next step is for the quartet to share the results of their meetings with the United States, the United Nations and the Palestinians and Israelis. And the next meeting for the quartet is expected to be in Paris, France. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
A parliamentary bill in Tunisia proposing the conscription of women into the military has been tabled. This is according to the country's defense ministry. The bill is aimed at achieving further gender equality by introducing mandatory military service for both men and women. Here is Adnan Shawashi with those details.
Saida is a journalist and women's rights activist. As a fierce defender and supporter of equality between men and women in all fields, she has taken it upon herself to encourage Tunisian women to join the defense forces.
Military service for women is a duty because we are active and successful in all fields. Why should women be excluded? Gender equality will be put to the test in Tunisia with the parliament's adoption or rejection of the legislative proposal.
MPs who sit on the Commission on Security and Defense in the Tunisian parliament say that the state must first provide the necessary infrastructure and logistics to facilitate the conscription of women into the military.
The idea is great, but did the state build and adapt the infrastructure and the logistical means to guarantee women's access to all training, military operations and specialties? The answer is no. Sometimes the lack of means is a handicap. The parliament can approve the draft law anytime, but is the state willing to guarantee the necessary conditions for women?
President Kais Saied has encouraged women who are serving in the Tunisian forces alongside men as soldiers, engineers and military aircraft pilots.
Once again, I reiterate my absolute confidence in the armed military forces. I trust the army men and women who serve the country in different branches and specialties. They are all dedicated to this noble cause.
All men over the age of 20 are eligible for military service in Tunisia, and this obligation remains until the age of 35. Women can volunteer to join the army, which was founded in June 1956. Said has declared that the country is facing unprecedented security challenges as the terror threat lingers. Tunisian authorities believe that women can play an important role in defending their homeland by joining the national army. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Meanwhile, Indonesia continues its search for the black box recorders from the Sriwijaya airplane that crashed 3 days ago. Authorities say they've retrieved more human remains and debris from the plane, where 62 people were on board. Search teams have deployed an underwater vehicle to help in the mission, while Navy vessels patrol the surface. The Boeing 737 plane plunged into the Java Sea Saturday afternoon, just minutes after taking off from Jakarta's main airport. Representatives from Boeing and the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board will arrive in Indonesia later this week to help with the investigation. Well, it's just about time for us to check in on all the latest from the world of business. World Bank projects Nigeria's economic recovery to see a 1.1% growth in 2021. And Somalia farmers reeling from crop losses due to invasion by swarms.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Time for the latest in business. We begin in Nigeria, where the World Bank projects the economy is expected to witness a 1.1% growth in 2021 and recover from last year's recession. Africa's leading economy slid into a recession last year, its second in 4 years, after its economy was hit hard by the outbreak of the COVID. A CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports early vaccination against the virus and favorable economic policies are central to this projection.
Nigeria's economy was buffeted by low revenue receipts, inflation, and a weak foreign exchange for most part of 2020. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, however, became the breaking point, tumbling Africa's largest economy into recession. Now the world growth rate at 1.1% as the economy prepares for recovery by the last quarter of 2021. But how realistic is this projection for the West African economy?
Advantage, it's easier for Nigerian economy and economies like Nigerian economy to get into positive growth than developed economies, because the gap, the economies still have window for expansion. But essentially, even if we recover from the recession, the economy will still be very, very, very bad in terms of both the productivity, in terms of GDP growth, in terms of revenue available to finance capital investment, and also in terms of household income. So it's a terrible time.
The moment we get an informal sector, if the moment we formalize it, then you'll be able to see it, because it's all about revenue, really. Okay, it's all about access to credit. Okay, it's all about job creation. It's all about job security. Okay, so the moment you're able to get job security, the moment you're able to get more people into employment, okay, your economy will grow. That's the point I'm trying to make. So we shouldn't be excited or otherwise at a 1.1% growth.
For the first 9 months of 2020, cumulative GDP contracted by 2.48%. Year on year in real terms, the economy contracted by 3.62%. The last time Nigeria slid into recession was in 2020. The country was recovering slowly until the advent of COVID-19, which necessitated a lockdown to curb the pandemic amid dwindling. Nigeria, which is Africa's leading oil producer and exporter, depends on crude oil for 90% of its export revenue. But average crude oil production's been cut by about 30%. While anticipating the positive growth of Nigeria's economy, experts advise government to invest in sectors expected to drive recovery.
There's been an increasing contribution of agriculture to GDP has been increasing. So if government improves its agro-reform, some of the agro-reform initiatives in the economic sustainability plan, we see agriculture maybe make some contribution. Other area depend on how they manage its entertainment, the service sector.
You can't do agriculture without energy. You can't do sustainable agriculture without water resources. You can't do sustainable agriculture without transportation, infrastructure. Focus more on technical education. That's it. Okay, let us begin to return all those technical institutions to service anywhere they are. The moment you have technically competent persons, with the AFTCE after now, coming on board, now these skills are even in much more higher demand.
The World Bank's prediction is dependent on the availability of early COVID-19 vaccines in the country, more so as the second wave of the pandemic sweeps across the globe. What's more, smart policy making is identified to be at the heart of Nigeria's economic rebound. Now, economic watchers are proposing policies that encourage private sector investment and productivity stimulation. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
On to agriculture matters now. Farmers in Somalia are counting their losses after a new wave of desert locusts destroyed large portions of farmland in parts of the country. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo is in Mogadishu and reports on how farmers are coping with a massive locust invasion.
Abdul Wahab Ahmed is inspecting his farm on the outskirts of Beledweyne in central Somalia. A new wave of migrating desert locusts has destroyed farmlands in most towns in this region. This footage shows new swarms swelling, migrating and increasing in number, posing a serious threat to crop production in a region that suffers from food insecurity and flooding.
It has left nothing behind. It has destroyed tomato farms, pawpaw, banana plantations, oranges and lemon trees. We are facing severe losses, and this will be felt in the markets. We have produced low quantity of tomatoes, bananas, pawpaws and lemons. Farmers, laborers, traders and transport companies really feel the loss.
Dahabo Mu'min is a laborer at one of the farms here. Her work is to collect grass and sell it in the local market. Business is no longer booming for her and many others. Large swarms of desert locusts consumed huge amounts of crops, placing both people and livestock at great risk.
Locusts have exhausted all that was left for our livestock. They have destroyed entire farmlands. We are unable to collect grass in sacks for young animals back home, like we used to before the infestation.
The situation is worse in Galkayo, the biggest town in central Somalia. Locals are struggling to contain a new invasion. They are using traditional ways like smoke, stones and noise from pots to chase away the locusts.
The biggest concern is the nuisance that is triggered by the wind direction. Our concern is its implication after the rainy season. In December and January, we have seen new waves coming from Bari, northeast and central regions. We have witnessed new migration from Ethiopia.
Last year, authorities declared a national emergency as swamps destroyed large swaths of farmlands across most parts of the country. With the support of the United Nations, Mogadishu acquired helicopters to boost its campaign against the desert locust. The exercise was carried out in 3 regions of Puntland, Galmudug and Somaliland. Meanwhile, authorities are concerned that migrating locusts from neighboring Kenya and Ethiopia will impact recent efforts made by the government in containing the infestation, especially during the next rainy cycle expected in April and May. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Now, the liquor industry in South Africa has warned of a spike in illicit liquor sales and looming job losses over the country's third to stop the spread of COVID-19. South African Breweries has approached the courts to declare the ban unconstitutional, arguing that the loss of livelihoods across the supply chain will be devastating. Sumitra Naidu tells us more.
The liquor industry is a major employer and an important contributor to our economy. Our priority at this time, however, must be to save lives. Reckless behavior due to alcohol intoxication has contributed to increased transmission. Alcohol-related accidents and violence are putting pressure on our hospital emergency units.
The economic impact of another ban on alcohol, government decided it needed to be done. The liquor industry is still reeling from the last 2 bans in 2020. South African Breweries, which produces the bulk of the country's beer, says around 165,000 jobs have been lost. But it's the small traders that have been hit the hardest.
The sad thing is, like, you are not being even noticed. You're not even being given a notice that we are going to close. You know, it's just a shutdown, immediate effect, you know. And you have people, remember it's a new business, so you have people that you need to pay, you have a rent that you need to pay, your landlord doesn't understand, workers are frustrated.
Healthcare workers are hoping the ban stays in place as they're battling to cope with the influx of patients suffering with the new variant of COVID. The latest ban took effect just days before the new year, providing some relief to hospitals. South African Breweries has approached the courts to have the ban overturned. The industry believes around 100,000 people moved into poverty as a direct result of the last alcohol ban.
We just want to open because government is not even helping us. Our kids are suffering. Schools are opening very soon. I'm relying on this money. You know, at this given moment, we don't have money. We are even scared the landlord can take over the business because you don't even have money to pay for the rent.
South Africa has the worst COVID infection rate on the continent, and a vaccine may only arrive in the second quarter of this year. The liquor ban is meant to prevent further death, but without an income that puts food on the table, thousands of people might still die without contracting COVID. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Thank you for staying with us. Here's what's still to come on Africa. We look at the Tunisian all-female DJ Academy giving women a spinning chance.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. Let's turn to Tunisia now, where mix master DJ Olfa Arfaoui began working in the field in 2017. She'd been fortunate to find training in Tunis organized by the German Goethe Institute. But once the program ended, Arfaoui couldn't find a space where young women could develop their skills further and learn new musical techniques. The DJ decided to come up with a solution. CGTN's Alexandria Majala has the details.
Tunisian women say they have long been excluded from the world of turntables and electronic music. But now they flock to a local DJ academy, which will help them launch a career in the creative profession. The academy was founded to try and close the gender gap in the field.
What we wanted to say is that women face more difficulties when they enter the field of electronic music or the arts in general. The difficulties are represented in access to training, information resources and capabilities.
The DJ Academy for Girls trains students, giving them hands-on experience in addition to their theoretical modules to battle stereotypes in the North African country that music mixing can only be performed by men. It was established in 2018 by Arfaoui and her partner as a form of protest at the music scene. The academy is the first of its kind in Tunisia and the MENA region.
As a female DJ, of course, my family and I experienced social pressure. But I'm lucky to have a pretty cool family who supported me, were there for me, and respected my choice really. With regards to being a woman DJ and the pressure I had in a field considered as man's field of electronic music in Tunisia, I think we just needed education. We just needed to change our mentality.
Last month, as part of their international 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, Le Fabrique chose 16 students from their courses to perform online to raise awareness on equality and ending violence against women. The Tunisian DJ Academy has taught 50 students in Tunis since its inception and has expanded to include other regions in the country, including a group of trainers and 7 female professionals who are proficient in electronic music as a creative craft and source of income. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Let's take you to Niger now, where the country's national museum is comprised mainly of exhibitions made by local curators. And to encourage residents into touring the place, the museum's management has lowered its entry fee to just about 10 US cents. Here is that story.
Niger's National Museum has various displays covering art, history, dinosaurs, nuclear energy, craftwork, and music, as well as live animals. Its clientele is equally diverse and includes even street children who walk across the country just to come and witness its beautiful artifacts.
I left the Yantala district to come to the museum. I paid not more than 10 cents. I wanted to see the animals, lions, monkeys, crocodiles and sheep.
It is a multidisciplinary museum that integrates cultural heritage and practices such as prehistory, archaeology and paleontology. It's also a zoo. We are aware that the public has a thirst for knowledge and comes here to discover more on our heritage.
The management insists that the museum is the country's cultural gem. Artisans working there come from all over the ethnically diverse nation, a sign of national unity.
It is with pride that I say that people make the museum a mirror, where we come to reflect ourselves, to know where we are, where we come from and where we are going. I think this is of paramount importance.
The museum was founded in 1960, just before Niger gained independence from France. Its management is planning to expand and refurbish it next year with the help of international donations. The museum promises that once the building is complete, the 111 species in the zoo will enjoy improved living conditions. Nick Modimba, CGTN.
Well, it's time for another short break. Here's what you can expect on Africa Live Sports. Hosts Egypt targeting a podium finish in the first ever 32-team World Handball Championships.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Egypt is set to host the 2021 World Men's Handball Championship in under 1 month, and the home nation has been preparing in the past year to improve on their best